Hello guys, welcome to the second video of Oops. Today we are today we will be learning about static keyword, mainly static keyword. Most of the time we use static keyword and we actually don't know why do we use. But today in today's session we will be learning about static keyword. When when can we use a static keyword and what are its benefits and why do we always write static in our main function or method like public static we write always write public static word main, right? Why do we always write here our main function? So today we will be discussing about that. Okay, so let's we can understand it through some example, but today like as from the previous video we know that if we declare class, if we declare some class uh, and to access its variables or methods something we need an object of that class, right? We need an object of that class to access that variables or methods, like, right? So there might be some cases where actually we don't want to access it via object, or where we don't want uh, it to be dependent on the object. It should be independent of the object. So for that cases we use static keyword. I know now you are actually not getting that, but when let's analyze it through an example, then everything will be cleared when to use a static keyword and how we can use that. So let's I'm taking you to my VS Code and I'm here making a file name main class. I'm making main class here, and so let's make the main function first. All right, uh, you can make a boiler plate for that. You don't need always to write so long main class. Just make a boilerplate and you are good to go. But I'm in habit of making that. So let's say you are making a class called student, right? You are making a class called student. So let's make a class called student, and here a student must have some properties like its name, age, roll number, whatever. So okay, let's make that. So I'm going to write, okay, string student have name, student have name, student have, it must have some age, and let's make a constructor for the same. We know that constructor is the same name as the class name, so we are going to add constructor, and we know that by default Java has default constructor. But if you want to give some we know that what's the use of constructor, how it is beneficial, so we are making it's our own constructor here. So uh, string name I'm taking two parameters like earlier, okay, and int sorry, int age, and we know that how to initialize that, like, okay, this dot this dot name equals to name, and this dot age equals to age, right? So we make the class uh, student class. It has some properties and method. So in order to access a name or something, we need an object for that, because we know that classes need an object. So okay, mm, let's make an object for that. So we know that how to make object, right? Student, let's say object name is Navneet. So we use new keyword, we pass the argument here, like okay, this is nk ns Navneet Singh, and here in the age we can give it like 21 is there. So actually we are getting error. Why? uh, can you analyze that why we are getting error? The reason is simple. We know that any classes need an object to be instantiated. uh, like okay, you're saying okay Navneet, but there is class student and I'm making student object, then why I'm getting error? Because you have not made an object for the class called main, which is the upper class. So just for the sake of simplicity, just for now, I'm taking it out of the main class. Now there is no any error, right? So what can we do actually? Actually, we can, right? Um, so if I try to access the, okay, let's say if I try to access the name property of Navneet. So again, I'm getting error. We know that we to access that we need to use object, a reference variable, to access that. If I run that, I'm getting here as ns Navneet, because we passed name as ns and we are getting that. So it's working properly. But what in a case like okay, that's cool, if we make another object we'll get that. But let's say we have to count the number of students, we have to count the number of students, right? So for that we need another variable int, let's say student number, what student number variable is there. And if you think about that, student number, this is actually, student number is actually independent of the object, right? Let's say if I'm making Navneet, let's say if I'm making Navneet as my object, and I want to count number of students. So if Navneet, one object Navneet is created, a student number count should be 1. If student number of if another student is created, it should be counted as 2. So actually it is not dependent on the object, right? Actually this student number is dependent on the class. Whenever we use the class, we are incrementing the value. Or if for the sake of simplicity, we can relate that whenever our student constructor is being called, whenever our student constructor is being called means when this constructor will be called, whenever the object is created. So for that we can say, okay, mm, that time of whenever object is created, constructor is called, that time we need to increment the value. So we don't need to pass it in the here in the parameter or the argument. So we can write, okay, student number should be like that, right? It should be incremented by 1. Then you have a question, Navneet, can we access that? Yeah, let's try to access the number of students count. Navneet dot student student number, right? So let's run the program here, and we are getting 1 because one object is created, and now we are getting 1. But what in case we want to get more object, like, okay, apart from Navneet, if we created some other object called, let's say this object name is student2, okay, student2, and here student2 is created. Now got it. And now if I try to print that, again I'm getting 1. Okay, you must say, okay, Navneet, you're accessing via Navneet variable, so Navneet count is 1, so you are getting 1. But what if we try to access it via class name, because student is the property of class, so but we should get 2, but here actually we are getting error. Why? uh, you are getting error. And if you're trying to access via the object, and we are not getting the proper count, right? You're not getting the proper count, so you must have question, what can you do then? So this is very simple. If you want to make something independent of the class, what if you want to make something independent of the class, you must use a static keyword. Here student number is independent of, sorry, if you want to make something independent of the object, you must use static keyword. So here we should use static variable, so that static keyword, so that it could be a property of the class, not the property of the object only. So for that we are making static student number. Okay, that's how we're getting that. Okay, you'll say, okay, that's fine. uh, so if we try to print it now, so let's print that. Okay, now we're getting 2. You must say, how Navneet, we are printing via the reference variable Navneet, means with the object Navneet we should get the count 1. No, if something is static, it is independent of the object. It doesn't matter whenever the object Navneet is created, or object something is created, it will be incrementing and its value is changing. So we are not getting Navneet. We know that this keyword is replaced with object name, right? So if you make the class if you make the object Navneet, so this will be like Navneet dot student number equals to 1, then it will be 1. If we create student2, then student2, the student number will be 1. 1 plus 1 equal to 2, right? So we are getting 2 here, and if the and this is actually independent of the object, so this student number will be set as 2. So if we try to access it via whether the object name or the class name, we still get the same result. If we try to access it via our second object called student2, let's say what happens. Again we are getting 2, no issues. But this is actually not a good practice. We should access it via class name. Okay, now we are getting 2, that's correct. But there might, here you can see we are getting a wording here. Up here, what is that? The student, here we are getting that the static field student dot student number should be accessed in a static way. It is saying that okay, your student number is static, you should access it in a static manner, not in a non-static manner. Like we are creating an object, so when creating an object, it is like what we are making an object of it. So actually we need to make an object when it is non-static. For static we don't need to make an object for that. So for that, it is actually telling us to use static way, like to use the class name here. So whenever you use the class name, we are not getting that warning. It was working correctly, no doubt, but you should access because it is independent. This is independent of the object, means this is a static, so you should access it via the class name, not the object name. Or you should manipulate it via class name. So whenever you are making something, some variable as static, you should access or modify it using in a static context, not in a non-static. So using class name, not the object name or reference variable, right? So that's how it's work. Like let's run the code. Yeah, we are getting to, that's correct. So we saw the use of static keyword here. How can we actually use that? Let's say actually what happens here we show to make how to make variable static. Now let's think about the first case where this student class was inside our main class, right? I did put it here. I put it here, and again I'm getting error here. If I'm trying to make an object, I'm getting error. Why? What is saying? It is saying no enclosing instance of type main is accessible. Actually, what is happening? This student class is inside the main class. Actually, it is inside a class. To access something inside a class, we should make an static. We should make an object of it. So we have not created an object of class called a main. So we can't access this class now. That's the problem here. That's the problem here. So this is actually our inner class, and this is our upper class. So to if the upper class is non-static, and you don't want to make object of the upper class, you just have to use the inner class. So you should declare it as static. Let's say I'm declaring it as static. Now error is gone, and if I try to run the program, I'm getting the correct output here, right? NS and 2, I'm getting that. Okay, so this is actually correct. And what if uh, mm, let's say okay, got it. um, this is way this is how you should use inner class. You should make inner class as a static if you are using its variables, right? Now take it. So here only now. Okay, so like this is what was the use of static, we saw that. But what happens if we want to access uh, non-static, if non-static member is inside static member, what can happen? So actually, let's do that. Let's make a function called void message function, and let's just here create something system dot out dot println, and we write okay, right, a message is being displayed here. So this is what this is actually non-static method. If we try to access it, uh, like if I am going to call this, I'm getting error. Why? Cannot make static reference to the non-static method, because inside main, or what is main? Main is our static method. Inside static, you can't use non-static. For that, you must make an object for that first. Okay, so let's if I try to make an object for that, let's make an object for the main uh, object here, new main, right? And now we made the object, and now if we try to call it via the object, and we are not getting error, and if we try to print that, okay, we are getting the message called okay. So it is running, means to access non-static member in a static member, we should make first an object for that. Only then we are able to access that, otherwise not. This is all like okay. Let's make a static void mm, message. Again we are taking okay system println. Now we are writing okay, fine. So this is static. If you try to access it directly, it can be accessed. We don't need to make an object of that. So actually we don't need an object for that. We are not getting any error. If we try to print that, we are getting fine, means okay, our code is running properly, because we see that this is inside class main, which is actually non-static, and for that we are making an object. We are making an object, not actually we are not making an object. We have made an static method called msgg message, and we are printing that, we are able to print that. So a static member can be accessed directly without making an object. That's cool. But let's say if I want to call message method inside this class, we are not able to, because this message is static and this message is non-static. We are not able to access it. In that, for that I need to make an object for that, then only we can access it. and if I try to access it via that, uh, okay, this is actually object 2. Okay, then we are not getting error. If we try to print that, okay, then NAS no need, NAS2 fine, and then okay is going to be printed now, because this message is calling this message method. So to use non-static member inside static, first you make to make an instance of it. So first you need to make the object for that, and then only you can print that, because non-static needs an object to be accessed or manipulations. uh, let's discuss something called uh, this our main function. This our main function can't be static, and our this main function, this will be always static. We can't make it as non-static. There is a reason for that. Why? Why? Why there? Why? This is obviously, you know, if we make this upper class as static, there is actually no need. Uh, we're getting error, because illegal modifier for this class when only public, abstract, and final are permitted. Only public, abstract, and final are permitted. Not static is not permitted, because we in the class something called non-static members will be created, something called static members will be created. We don't know actually what we are going to do in that. So the class should be non-static. It is not stat to be allowed. It is not allowed to make the upper classes static, right? Only inner classes can be static. So that's what. And this upper class must be public, and the inner classes can be, but the class out of these upper classes can be public. The name, the file name, what is the name, only that class can be public, and inside that classes can be public, but not this one can't be public, right? And apart from now discuss why do we need to make main class as public class, sorry, public main class is static. Why? So what is actually main class? Like we know that our we know that our main class should be static, but why there is need of the main class to be static? Why? So that's actually good, because whatever inside the class, let's say main class, mm, here our main class is the public static void. um, this is also public static void. This is also a main method, or main method actually. This actually we this is actually the running part of the program. Java files knows this should be executed. Java files knows this should be executed, means this is the starting of execution of the code or the program. Starting execution of the program, right? So for that, if I want to start executing that, And let's say if you want to print something, say so like okay, I'm fine, I'm fine. So do we need for this for to print this, we should not create an object of the class main, right? This should be independent of that because we should be allowed to print anything. There is no need of making the object class, right? So for that reason we don't actually need to make an object. So to make it free from the object we need to use static keyword. So our main class is always um, static. That's the reason. And so till now till now what we discussed, um, static variable, static variable, why do we need that? Then we also discussed about static class, actually where this can be used. Then we discussed non-static member in static member. Then also we discussed like how to access that non-static in a static. We know that. And uh, mm, then what we did, then we PSVM why static क्यों होता है, why it is static, we discussed that things. These are the things from this lecture, but this is not over yet. So now we can discuss like why यार um, we discussed non-static member in a static member. Can we discuss non-static in non-static? So this is quite simple. Let's say we make a non-static member. Now let's make another non-static member called void message2. And now I'm calling the our non-static message here. So you can see that I'm not getting any error here. I'm able to access that, right? So this is accessible. Non-static can be accessed in non-static member. That's no any issues for that. Like apart from these topics, uh, we have some more topics to discuss, like how to initialize static variables, and something called we have also a singleton class is there. So just focus here, we are going to focus on, just we'll take one more topic, how to initialize, how to initialize a static variable. So to initialize a static variable, we need something called static block. we need something called static block, which is denoted by static and in this way. So we can do that. Let's say we are like, okay, it's out of this class. Let's make class static block. Class is there. Inside that uh, we have something called um, static int a. Here actually I'm initializing this one, and we can have some static, another static variable static int b, which is actually not initialized, so we have to initialize that. So for that we need something called static block, which is denoted like that, static keyword, and with curly braces is open like classes. Okay, so in that let's print the statement call. So we, to make sure what is actually happening, whether we are inside this box or not, let's print. Okay, static block here. Oh, okay, now I want to make b equals to a. We can do something, some operations like multiply 2, b equals to a times 2. Now we want to access that. Let's go inside our main function. We are going to access that. Okay, so we know that we should make an object for that. Static block, uh, let's say as object new static block. There is no constructor over here, so that okay, fine. Now we want to print that. We want to print that what? We know that members are static, so we should access it via class name. So class name is static block, so I'm accessing a via class name. So let's run that. So okay, again here it is run. I'm in a static block and I'm getting 4, right? So this static block has run and it is giving us 4. We have printed only the value of a. What if I try to print the again, if I try to print the value of b also? Okay, okay, let's print that. Okay, I'm in a static block. Our value a is printed. Now a and b value is printed, which is 4 and 8, right? Means we know that okay, this inside, if the value of a is 4, in the again after it is a, if we are making object for that class, this is entering this static block and setting the value as a time b as twice of a. But what if I try to make like, okay, now I want to like, okay, let's say I'm again uh, incrementing the value. Okay, static block dot b plus equals to, let's say 5. Let's say 5 means now what we were getting, that we were getting b as 8, and you should now think like, okay, now 8 we were getting, now it is 8 plus 5 13. If I try to print this statement again, if I try to print this statement again, we should get this, as this will be the 4, but what about this b? So we're like, okay, it first set it as 8, then 5 will be added 13, then again when I'll try to print that, it will go inside the static and it will multiply by 2, so 13 into 2, 26 is there, so it is gonna print 4 and 26. Let's run that. No, I'm actually getting 4 and 13. Why? uh, After again 8, only 8 was here only, then we incremented 5 13, then is to, if it is entering that block, it must print 26, but not, it's printing only 13. Means what's that actually? This static block runs only once, means whenever it's called, uh, it runs only once, means it is, a static block is used to initialize the object, and this initialization happens only once. So after initializing, it never enters the static block again. If you look at the output hour again, so here I'm in static block 4 4 8, but after that, when I called it again, it is not showing that you have entered in a static block again. It is just showing the output. Means static block is static block runs only once. You can't run it twice. Okay, so now we discussed how to initialize static variables. So we discussed these things, these topics: static variables, static classes, non-static member, in static member, why do we make a main method as static or non-static in a static, and how to initialize static variable. That was the today's topic, and for with that note, we are now ending the session. Okay, and thank you for watching till the end. Thank you. Bye. Navneet. Thank you guys. Bye bye.